My name is Ingrid Meyers. I am 33 years old. And the morning I walked into that courtroom completely alone, my mother-in-law Nancy was already smiling. Not a nervous smile. Not a polite one. The kind of smile a person wears when they've already counted the money in their head and spent it twice. She sat on the other side of the aisle in a black blazer, with a string of pearls around her neck. The same pearls I had given her for Christmas 3 years ago. Her lawyer sat beside her in a pressed grey suit, his Mont Blanc pen resting on a thick leather folder. My sister-in-law Paige sat one row behind them, legs crossed, chin lifted, nodding at every word her mother whispered like they had already won. I carried one thing into that courtroom. A leather briefcase my husband Grant had given me for my 31st birthday. It was heavier than it looked. 6 months of silence had gone into that briefcase. 6 months of receipts. 6 months of bank statements. 6 months of sworn affidavits, forensic reports, and one single document nobody in that room expected me to bring. What none of them knew. Not Nancy. Not Paige. Not their lawyer in his $200 tie. Was what was inside that folder. And what the judge was about to say next would change everything. But before any of that happened. Before the gavel. Before the verdict. Before the woman who raised my husband tried to erase me from his life. I need you to understand how a quiet wife and a paralegal with a leather briefcase ended up sitting alone at a respondent's table in Stafford County Circuit Court. So let me take you back. If you have ever been dismissed by someone who underestimated you. If you have ever been told to sit down and accept a decision that was made behind your back. Stay with me. Because this one is going to feel personal. Drop a comment below telling me where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button. And let me tell you exactly how the woman who thought I had nothing walked out of that courtroom with nothing left. Grant and I bought our house the year we got married. A small 2-bedroom ranch-style place on a quiet street in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Nothing fancy. Vinyl siding. A chain-link fence. A dogwood tree Grant planted the first spring we moved in because he said every house needed one living thing that wasn't paying rent. He was a plumber. Self-employed. Up every morning at 5:30. Old Spice on his neck. Steel-toed boots by the door. I would hear his van pull out of the driveway before the sun cleared the tree line. I am a paralegal. 7 years at Jenkins and Whitmore. A small estate planning firm on Princess and Street. I draft wills. I file probate petitions. I organize trust documents. I know Virginia probate law the way Grant knew copper fittings. By feel. By memory. By doing. We weren't rich. We had a mortgage. A savings account we added to every month like clockwork. And a life insurance policy Grant took out when we got married. We also had a will. We drew it up together 4 years ago. Right there at Margaret Whitmore's desk. My boss watching us sign. Everything to each other. Simple. Clean. The kind of document I help other people create every single day. I had no idea that simple piece of paper would one day be the only thing standing between me and losing everything. Grant's family lived nearby. His mother Nancy was 25 minutes south in Stafford. His sister Paige was out in Richmond. About 90 minutes east. His uncle Dale, Nancy's brother, was up in Culpeper. 45 minutes north. We saw them at Thanksgiving. Sometimes Easter. Nancy was always polite to me. Polite the way a bank teller is polite. Professional. Measured. And gone the second the transaction was done. Paige borrowed money from Grant 3 times. She never paid any of it back. I should have seen it then. The way they smiled at me when Grant was in the room. The way their eyes slid past me when he wasn't. But love makes you generous with the people your husband loves. And I was generous. Until I had no choice but to stop being. Grant died on a Tuesday in September. I was at my desk reviewing a trust amendment when Margaret's phone rang. She answered it. She looked at me. And she said my name in a way I had never heard before. Quiet. Careful. Like the word itself might break something. A truck ran a red light on Route 3 while Grant was driving to a job in King George. They told me he was gone before the paramedics arrived. I drove to the hospital anyway. I sat in a plastic chair in a hallway that smelled like floor cleaner and held his wedding ring, which a nurse had put in a small envelope. The floorboards came out from under me that day. I don't mean I collapsed. I mean the ground I had built my life on simply stopped being there. And I had to keep walking anyway. So I did. I called the funeral home. I called the insurance company. I notified Grant's clients. I sent emails to our friends. I scheduled the service. I picked the casket. I chose the hymns. If I stopped moving, I would stop functioning. That was the trade I made with myself. And I kept it. Nancy came to the house that evening. She sat at our kitchen table and cried. Real tears. I held her hand because she had lost her son. And whatever else Nancy was. That grief was not performance. She had raised Grant alone after his father left. Walked out when Grant was 12. Moved to Florida. Never called. Nancy had carried that boy through braces and baseball tryouts and trade school applications on a pharmacy manager's salary. She loved Grant. I never doubted that. What I doubted later was what that love entitled her to do. The funeral was on a Saturday. White Lilies. Grant's favorite Creedence Clearwater song. A church he hadn't attended in years, but where his grandmother's name was on a brass plaque by the entrance. I organized everything because that's what I do. Over-responsible in red, handling the unbearable by turning it into a checklist. Nancy sat in the front pew holding Paige's hand. When the pastor invited family to speak, Nancy rose immediately. She talked for 6 minutes. I know because I was watching the clock on the back wall. Not counting. Just needing something steady to look at. She talked about raising Grant alone. About the sacrifices she made. About the apartment they had shared when he was small. The double shifts at CVS so he could have cleats for Little League. She did not mention me once. Not my name. Not our marriage. Not 7 years of building something together. I told myself she was grieving. That grief does strange things to people's peripheral vision. But after the service, Paige pulled me aside near the coat closet. Her perfume was sharp. Something floral and aggressive. You should let Mom handle Grant's accounts for now, she said. You are grieving. You are not thinking clearly. I looked at her. Paige had never held a stable job longer than 14 months. She owed credit card companies more than most people owe on a car. I appreciate the thought, I said. But I will manage. She pressed her lips together the way people do when they have rehearsed a follow-up and decided not to use it. At the reception, Dale shook my hand. He squeezed too hard. And he didn't look me in the eye. On the way home I replayed all 3 moments. Nance's speech. Paige's suggestion. Dale's handshake. And I felt something underneath the grief. Something sharp and thin. Like a paper cut you don't notice until you wash your hands. I didn't know it yet. But the 3 of them had already been in a room together. Without me. Talking about my husband's house. my husband's savings, my husband's life, and deciding what they thought I deserved. 2 weeks after the funeral, Nancy started coming by the house. She said she wanted to help me sort through Grant's things. At first I let her. She folded his shirts, boxed up his boots, wrapped his fishing rods in newspaper. Useful tasks. Genuine help. Then I noticed her pattern. She wasn't just sorting. She was searching. She would open the top drawer of Grant's desk, flip through folders, close it, and move to the next. She went through the filing cabinet in the spare room twice. I watched her from the hallway while she rifled through a stack of old tax returns like she was looking for a receipt at the bottom of a purse. "Are you looking for something specific?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "Just memories, dear." Her voice was soft. Her eyes went somewhere else. I heard her heels click across the kitchen tile as she moved toward the living room. That particular sound. Hard and rhythmic. Like a metronome set to someone else's tempo. It became a sound I associated with Nancy. Not with comfort. With territory. What I didn't know yet, what I wouldn't learn until weeks later, was what Nancy was doing when she wasn't at my house. She was calling people. Grant's Aunt Judith. His old roommate from trade school. The couple who lived next door to us. She told them I had changed the locks and wouldn't let her visit. She told them I was acting erratic and shutting out Grant's real family. None of it was true. I hadn't changed a single lock. I hadn't shut anyone out. But Nancy understood something I was too exhausted to see. Whoever controls the story controls the outcome. And she had started writing hers the day we buried her son. 1 month after the funeral, Dale called. He said we needed to sit down and talk about Grant's estate. Just formalities, he said. Nothing to worry about. I drove to Nancy's house in Stafford. The three of them were sitting at her dining room table. Nancy, Paige, Dale. Like a panel waiting for a candidate to walk in. Dale slid a document across the table. It was a will. Typed. Signed. Dated 2 months before Grant died. I read it once. Then I read it again. The will left the house and savings account to Nancy. The life insurance payout was split between Paige and Dale. I was to receive personal belongings. That was the phrase. Personal belongings. 7 years of marriage reduced to whatever fit in a cardboard box. Nancy folded her hands on the table. Her voice was steady. Almost tender. Grant would have wanted his family to have it. I looked at the signature. I didn't gasp. I didn't shake. But something inside me went very cold and very still. The way water freezes from the edges inward. The signature was wrong. I had spent 7 years watching Grant sign things. Checks. Invoices. Building permits. Our mortgage paperwork. His G had a distinctive counterclockwise loop at the top. This G looped clockwise. The pen pressure was too even through the middle strokes. Traced. Not freehand. And the date on the will. Grant had been in Roanoke that week. 3 hours away. Replacing sewer lines for a commercial client. He wasn't home. May I have a copy? I said. Dale nodded. The original is already filed with the court. Filed. Before I had even been told it existed. I took the copy. I said good night. I drove home. My hands shook on the steering wheel. Not from fear. From the specific surgical fury of someone who does this work for a living. And has just been handed a forgery. That night I sat at the kitchen table with the copy spread flat under the overhead light. I pulled a legal pad from my work bag. And I wrote 3 things. 1. The signature was traced. The pen pressure didn't fluctuate the way a natural hand does. It was too uniform through the curves. Too heavy at the end points. And the graphite to ink ratio in the photocopy suggested a pencil sketch underneath. 2. The date. I checked Grant's Google Calendar. Still synced to my phone because I hadn't been able to bring myself to delete his account. September 3rd through September 7th he was in Roanoke. 180 miles from our kitchen table. 3. The witnesses. 2 names I had never heard. Grant had maybe 40 people in his life he would call real friends. These 2 weren't among them. 3 red flags. Any one of them would get a file flagged at my office. Together. They were a neon sign. But Nancy didn't know who she was dealing with. She thought she was up against a grieving widow. She was actually up against a paralegal with 7 years of estate litigation experience. And a kitchen table. And nothing left to lose. I called Margaret Whitmore at 9:15 the next morning. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for 10 seconds. A long silence from a woman who bills by the quarter hour. You know what you need to do, she said. And you know I can't represent you. It is a conflict. I did know. I was her employee. If she represented me, opposing counsel would have a field day. But I can point you in the right direction, she added. She gave me the name of Dr. Ellen Sayers. A forensic document examiner with 47 court testimonies and a publication record in the Journal of Questioned Documents. Then she said something else. Something I would carry with me through every dark hour of the next 6 months. In red. You write these petitions every day. You know how to file. Proceed. I did. I knew exactly how. I went back to Nance's house 3 days later. I told her I had questions about the 2 witnesses listed on the will. Their names. How Grant knew them. When they had been present for the signing. Nancy stood in her doorway. She didn't invite me in. They were friends of Grant's from when he was young, she said. Before your time. Before my time. I had been in Grant's life for 10 years. 3 dating. 7 married. I knew every person who had come to his birthday parties. Every co-worker who had borrowed his tools. Everyone from his poker night. These 2 names didn't exist in any of those circles. I told Nancy I would be contesting the will. She already knew. Her response was delivered at room temperature. Every syllable measured. You came without an attorney. You have already lost. That sentence landed like a slap. Not because it stung. But because it told me everything. She had already hired a lawyer. She had already filed the will. She had mapped this out while I was still choosing flowers for Grant's casket. Paige appeared behind Nancy in the hallway. Leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. Just accept it in red. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. I looked at both of them. Mother and daughter. A united front in a doorway I used to walk through carrying pie on Thanksgiving. I am not making anything ugly, I said. I am asking questions. I drove home. 25 minutes on I-95 South. Hands at 10 and 2. Radio off. In the silence I let the arithmetic settle. She had hired a lawyer. She had filed first. She had been planning this since before the dirt on Grant's grave had settled. And she thought I would fold because I was alone. She was about to learn what alone could build. The next Monday I filed a will contest with the Stafford County Circuit Court. I typed the petition myself on my lunch break using the same template I use for clients at work. Grounds: forgery and fraud. Supported by the respondent's professional experience in estate documentation. Filing fee $275. I paid it with my debit card. That same week I started building my evidence file. I went to the bank and pulled 7 years of mortgage statements. Every payment made from our joint account. Every check signed by me. Every automatic withdrawal I had set up because Grant always forgot the 15th of the month. I gathered the utility bills. The homeowner's insurance. The property tax receipts. All in my name or in both our names. I photographed Grant's signature on 22 separate documents. Invoices from his plumbing business. Our home purchase agreement. Tax returns. The building permits he had pulled for bathroom renovations. 6 of those signatures were clear enough for comparison. I packaged them in a manila envelope and sent them to Dr. Ellen Sayers by certified mail along with a photocopy of the contested will. Her retainer was $3,200. I wrote the check that evening sitting at the kitchen table. The same table where I had identified the forgery a week before. By day I processed other people's estate files at Jenkins and Whitmore. Trusts. Probate petitions. Beneficiary designations. By night I built my own case. The manila folder sat on the passenger seat of my car every morning. It went into my desk drawer at work. Came home with me at 5:30. And sat on the kitchen counter while I ate dinner alone. It was getting thicker. And while it grew, the walls around me started to close. The isolation started slowly. Then all at once. Grant's Aunt Judith. A woman who had hugged me at every holiday for 7 years. Called one evening with a voice full of rehearsed concern. Ingrid, honey. Is it true you changed the locks and won't let Nancy visit? I hadn't changed any locks. I told her so. She paused. Well, Nancy said. Nancy said something that isn't true, I said. The silence on the other end had a texture to it. Like she was deciding which story to believe and finding mine less convenient. Tommy. Grant's closest friend. An electrician who had been best man at our wedding. Sent me a text. Hey. I am hearing things. I don't know what to believe. I wrote back with the facts. Kept it short. He read the message. Didn't respond for 3 days. That was when I understood the shape of what Nancy had built. She hadn't just filed a will. She had filed a version of reality. One where I was the outsider. The grief-stricken woman making irrational decisions. The daughter-in-law who didn't deserve what Grant left behind. And she had seeded it everywhere. Phone calls. Facebook messages. Parking lot conversations after church. I started keeping a log. Dates. Names. What was said. By whom. Not recordings. I didn't need recordings. I needed a paper trail. The kind that holds up under cross-examination. The manila folder grew another 1/4 inch. I ate dinner alone every night. Microwaved soup. Crackers. Sometimes just coffee. I slept on my side of the bed. The house was quieter than it had ever been. But quiet isn't the same as empty. Quiet was where I was building. And then Paige showed up. It was a Thursday afternoon. No phone call. No warning. Just the sound of her car door slamming in my driveway. She was wearing sunglasses indoors. Which told me either she had been crying. Or she wanted me to think she had. I need to pick up some family things, she said. Stepping past me before I could respond. She went straight for the living room. Pointed at the painting above the fireplace. A landscape Grant had bought at an art fair on our 5th anniversary. That was Grandma Caldwell's, she said. It wasn't. I had watched Grant pay $65 for it from a woman selling watercolors out of her minivan. It wasn't, I said. She pointed at the silver flatware set in the hutch. That is definitely family silver. It was a wedding gift from my parents' Paige. She spun around. The sunglasses came off. Her eyes were red. But not from sadness. You don't get to keep everything just because you married him. I am not keeping everything, I said. I am keeping what is mine. That is when she said it. The line I still hear when the house gets too quiet, and my mind wanders back to this stretch of my life. Blood is blood, sweetheart. You were just renting the name. She said it the way people say things they have been saving. Practiced. Loaded. Aimed for the ribs. I stood at the front door. Held it open. Kept my voice flat. I think you should leave. She left. Slammed her car door hard enough that the neighbor's dog started barking. I closed my front door. Leaned my back against it. Closed my eyes. In my left hand I was holding a mortgage receipt from that morning. $1,847. I had paid it. Same as every month. I wasn't renting anything. But Paige wasn't the dangerous one. The dangerous one was the quiet one. The one who hadn't said much at the dining room table. The one who waited. Dale was quieter than the women. He didn't confront. He maneuvered. The first thing I noticed was the padlock. Grant had a storage shed behind the house. Corrugated metal. No insulation. Full of business records. Old invoices. A filing cabinet with copies of every contract he had ever signed. I went out one morning to pull his permits and found a new combination lock on the door. I hadn't put it there. I called Dale. He picked up on the 4th ring. Oh yeah. I secured that as part of estate management, he said. Casual as changing a tire. As executor, I have a fiduciary responsibility to protect estate assets. Fiduciary responsibility. Dale ran a construction company that was bleeding money. He had lost 2 contracts the previous year, and was behind on payments to his subcontractors. That is the man lecturing me about fiduciary duty. A week later I discovered he had sent a letter to our bank. On letterhead he must have had printed. Identifying himself as executor, and requesting a hold on Grant's sole proprietorship account. The bank complied. Then I checked our joint savings. Frozen. I called the bank. Spoke to a manager named Linda. And cited Virginia Code Section 64.2-38. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship is not a probate asset. It transfers automatically to the surviving co-owner. Linda said. We received a letter from the estate's executor. We need to verify. The account is titled joint with right of survivorship, I said. It passes outside probate. The executor has no authority over it. Linda promised a review within 5 business days. I wrote down her full name. The date. The time. And the reference number she gave me. The manila folder was getting heavy. 5 days later. The bank called. Linda. Same manager. Slightly warmer this time. Miss Mayers. We reviewed the account. You are correct. The joint account passes to you as surviving co-owner. The hold has been removed. I transferred enough to cover Dr. Sayers's retainer that afternoon. $3,200 wired from the account my husband and I had built together over 7 years of direct deposits and discipline. But while I was reviewing the statements, I found something else. A withdrawal of $2,800 from Grant's sole proprietorship account. His business account. In his name only. The withdrawal was dated 3 weeks after his death. The authorization letter attached to it bore Dale's name. And the word executor. The problem was simple. The will naming Dale as executor had not been validated by the court yet. He had no legal authority to access that account. He had stolen from a dead man. And he had signed his own name to the receipt. I printed the statement. Highlighted the withdrawal. Filed it under a new tab in the manila folder. That evening I packaged 6 of Grant's clearest signatures from tax returns. The home purchase agreement. An invoice from a kitchen remodel he had done in Spotsylvania. And sent them to Dr. Sayers via priority mail. Then I sat on the edge of the bed. The house was dark except for the hallway light. On the bathroom shelf, Grant's bottle of Old Spice sat exactly where he had left it. Half full. Cap crooked because he never screwed it tight. I picked it up. Held it near my face. Closed my eyes. The scent was fading. Everything was fading except the case. The case was getting sharper every day. You know that feeling when someone tells you that you can't do something. And every bone in your body knows they are wrong. That was me every single morning when I drove to work with that manila folder on the passenger seat. If you have ever had to prove yourself to people who already decided you didn't matter, stay with me. Because the part you have been waiting for is coming. 6 weeks after I sent the samples, Dr. Sayers called. I have preliminary findings, she said. Can you come in? Her office was in an industrial park off Route 1. A plain brick building with a small plaque by the door that read Sayers Forensic Document Services. Inside it looked like a cross between a dentist's office and a crime lab. Magnifying equipment. UV light boxes. A desktop scanner the size of a small refrigerator. She sat me down across from her desk and opened a binder with plastic sleeves. Each sleeve holding a high-resolution enlargement of Grant's signature. The signature on the questioned document is not consistent with the known exemplars, she said. She pointed to the enlargements. Look here. The pen pressure through the middle strokes is too uniform. In a natural signature, pressure varies. It is lighter on upstrokes. Heavier on downstrokes. This signature maintains consistent pressure throughout, which is characteristic of tracing. She flipped to an overlay. The question signature layered over a known one. Adjusted for scale. The slant angle differs by approximately 12 degrees from every exemplar. And here. She pointed to the base of the G. There are graphite traces beneath the ink. Someone sketched the signature in pencil first. Then traced over it in ink. She closed the binder. In my professional opinion, this signature was not produced by the same hand that produced the exemplars. I asked how many times she had testified in court. 47, she said. The formal report would take 2 more weeks. I held the preliminary findings on my lap during the drive home. My hands were steady. The folder on the passenger seat was almost full. But there was one more thing waiting for me. One more piece I hadn't expected. And it would change everything I thought I knew about my husband and what he had been preparing for. That weekend I remembered something Grant had said during one of those late-night kitchen conversations that married people have. The kind where you are both too tired to go to bed and too comfortable to move. He had mentioned a safety deposit box at First National on Caroline Street. Just in case, he had said. You know where the key is. I hadn't thought about it since. But now I tore through the hall closet looking for his winter coat. The heavy canvas one he wore hunting. The one I had pushed to the back of the rod, because the sleeve still smelled like Old Spice, and would smoke. And I couldn't look at it without losing my breath. The key was in the inside pocket. Small. Brass. Attached to a paper tag with a number written in Grant's handwriting. At the bank I presented my driver's license, our marriage certificate, and Grant's death certificate. The manager led me to the vault. The box was small. Maybe 5 by 10 inches. Inside, our original will. 4 years old. Signed by Grant in that unmistakable counterclockwise G, witnessed by Tommy Hale and Margaret Whitmore. Everything to each other. And beneath the will, a single sheet of notebook paper folded once. Grant's handwriting. Messy. Slanting right. The kind of penmanship that made substitute teachers wince. In red. If you are reading this, I hope it is just because you are organizing again. But if something happened to me, you already know what to do. I trust you more than anyone. I sat in my car in the bank parking lot for 11 minutes. I know because the dashboard clock was the only thing I could focus on. I held that piece of notebook paper against my chest and cried for the first time since the funeral. Grant had already told the world who his family was. He had written it down. Signed it. Locked it in a steel box. And trusted me to find it. Nancy could say whatever she wanted. Grant had already answered. By mid-December I had a case file that would make any attorney in my office proud. Tab 1. The contested will. Annotated with the 3 red flags I had identified the night I first saw it. Tab 2. Dr. Sayers' preliminary report. Tab 3. The original will from the safety deposit box. Signed by Grant. Witnessed by Tommy Hale and Margaret Whitmore. Tab 4. 7 years of mortgage statements. Utility bills. Property tax receipts. And home insurance documents. All paid by me or by our joint account. Tab 5. The bank statement showing Dale's unauthorized withdrawal of $2,800 from Grant's sole proprietorship account. Tab 6 would hold Dr. Sayers' formal report when it arrived. I called Tommy. He picked up on the second ring this time. The 3-day silence from before had apparently ended when he heard I was contesting the will. Tell me what you need, he said. I needed his sworn statement confirming he had witnessed Grant's signature on the original will 4 years ago. And that he had never signed any other will for Grant. Tommy came to my kitchen table that Saturday. Signed an affidavit I had prepared. And drank 2 cups of black coffee while telling me stories about Grant that made us both laugh for the first time in months. Margaret Whitmore prepared her own affidavit confirming the same. She had witnessed Grant's execution of the original will in her office. 2 witnesses. Both credible. Both willing to testify under oath. I organized everything into the manila folder. Now upgraded to Grant's leather briefcase, because the folder couldn't hold it all anymore. I created a tabbed index. I numbered every exhibit. I was not a woman falling apart. I was a paralegal building a case the way I had been trained to build them. And it was nearly ready. Nancy's lawyer made the first move in January. His name was Richard Hartwell. Mid-50s. Practiced out of an office in Woodbridge. Handled mostly real estate closings and traffic violations. Estate litigation wasn't his specialty. Which told me Nancy had hired him because he was cheap. Or because he was a friend. Or both. Hartwell sent me a letter offering settlement. The terms. I keep Grant's personal belongings and receive $15,000. Nancy gets the house. The savings. And the insurance payout. $15,000. Our savings account alone held $63,000. The house was worth $225,000 with the equity we had built. The life insurance was $200,000. They were offering me pocket change to walk away from everything Grant and I had built together. I responded by email. Brief, professional, and copied to the court file. The respondent declines the settlement offer and intends to proceed with the will contest as filed. That night Paige called at 10. She sounded like she had been drinking. "You are going to lose everything and look stupid doing it," she said. I said good night, Paige, and ended the call. The next morning Dale tried. His voice had that Uncle Knows Best warmth. The kind Grant used to roll his eyes at. Ing read. "This doesn't need to go to court. Lawyers are expensive. Think about it. I don't have a lawyer, Dale. I am representing myself." The line went quiet. Then he said, "That is your choice," and hung up. I knew exactly what their settlement offer meant. It meant they weren't confident. A forged document holds up only as long as nobody looks too closely. They were hoping I wouldn't look. They were counting on me being alone, overwhelmed, and too grief-broken to fight. They were wrong on every count. Dr. Sayers' final report arrived in the first week of February. A 22-page document with 6 appendices of photographic evidence. I read it sitting in my living room, with the briefcase open on the coffee table. The late afternoon light coming through the window where Grant's dogwood tree was still bare from winter. The conclusion was on page 4. The question signature on the document dated August 3 does not represent a genuine signature of the purported testator Grant Allen Mayers. The signature was produced through the process of tracing as evidenced by 1. Subsurface graphite deposits consistent with pencil underdrawing. 2. Uniform pen pressure inconsistent with natural handwriting dynamics. 3. A 12-degree slant deviation from all 6 known exemplars. 4. Reverse stroke direction in the uppercase G contradicting the testator's established habitual pattern. The appendices included side-by-side enlargements at 400% magnification, pressure map analyses, and overlay comparisons that made the forgery look almost comically obvious once you knew what to look for. I slid the report into the last tab of the briefcase. Every section was full now. 7 tabs. Every piece of evidence indexed, cross-referenced, and ready to present in the order I had rehearsed. I looked out the window. The dogwood hadn't budded yet, but the branches were darker than they had been in December. Sap rising. Life moving upward through wood that looked dead from the outside. The court date was in 3 weeks. I had already written my opening statement. I had already scheduled my witnesses. I had already filed my exhibit list with the court clerk, including a copy of Dr. Sayers' report to opposing counsel 10 days before trial. Exactly as the rules required. I was ready. And the only person who knew just how ready I was me. I spent the next 3 weeks preparing the way I imagine surgeons prepare. Obsessively. Methodically. Imagining every possible complication, and building a response for each one. I wrote and rewrote my opening statement until I could deliver it from memory. I organized my witnesses. Dr. Sayers first to establish the forensic foundation. Tommy second to authenticate the original will. Margaret's affidavit filed as documentary evidence. I practiced in front of the bathroom mirror. Then in front of the living room couch. Then over Zoom with Margaret, who sat in her home office and listened like a judge. Slower on the forensic section, she said. Let the evidence breathe. Don't rush the overlay comparisons. The judge needs time to see what you are showing her. I adjusted. Practiced again. Again. I bought a navy suit at the outlet mall off Route 3. The first new piece of clothing I had purchased since Grant died. Standing in the fitting room, I looked at myself in the three-way mirror and realized something. Every action I had taken for 6 months had been reactive. Responding to Nance's moves. Countering Dale's maneuvers. Absorbing Paige's attacks. The suit was the first thing I had done purely for myself. Not for defense. Not for survival. For the version of myself I intended to be when I walked into that courtroom. I pressed it that night and hung it on the back of the bedroom door. I transferred Grant's briefcase from the kitchen table to the entryway bench where I could grab it on the way out the door. Everything had a place. Everything was accounted for. The only variable left was whether the judge would see what I could see. That the document Nancy filed was a lie. And that Grant's actual wishes were locked in a steel box he had trusted me to find. The night before the hearing, Paige sent a text at 9:14. I was brushing my teeth. My phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. And I read it in the mirror's reflection. Mom says you are going in alone tomorrow. You already lost before you walked in. The laughing emoji. The certainty. The echo of what Nancy had said 3 months earlier in her doorway. The same line recycled by her daughter like a family heirloom of contempt. I put the phone down. Did not respond. I rinsed. Dried my face. And walked to the kitchen. Poured a glass of water. Stood at the counter in the dark. Drinking it slowly. At 9:40 Nancy called. Her voice had that particular softness she deployed when she wanted something warm on the surface. Calculation underneath. In red. It is not too late to settle. I don't want to embarrass you in front of a judge. I appreciate the call, Nancy. See you tomorrow. I hung up. Sat on the edge of the bed. Opened the briefcase one last time. Tab 1. Their will. Tab 7. Dr. Sayers' report. In between. 6 months of evidence that told the truth Nancy had been trying to bury. I closed the briefcase. Set it on the floor beside my nightstand. Turned off the lamp. And for the first time in 5 months I slept through the night. No dreams. No waking at 3 in the morning with my heart hammering against the mattress. Just 8 hours of the deep clean sleep that comes when you know exactly what you are going to do and exactly how you are going to do it. My alarm went off at 6. I showered. I dressed. I picked up the briefcase. And I drove to the courthouse. That text from Paige. The laughing emoji. The certainty that I would crumble. I saved it. Not as evidence. Just as a reminder of what it feels like when someone counts you out before the first word is spoken. If you have ever been that person. The one nobody expects to fight back. Keep watching. Because what happens in the next 10 minutes is what every quiet woman in the world deserves to see. I got to the Stafford County Courthouse at 7:40. Parked in the second row. Sat in my car for 3 minutes with my hands on the briefcase. Feeling the weight of it. The leather warm under my palms. Then I walked in. The hallway was long. Marble floors. Fluorescent lights. The kind of institutional architecture that makes everyone look slightly smaller than they are. My low heels clicked evenly on the tile. I carried the briefcase in my right hand. No one walked beside me. Outside courtroom B I saw them. Nancy stood near the water fountain in a black blazer with pearls. The same pearls I had bought her for Christmas 3 years ago. She was speaking quietly to a man in a grey suit carrying a Mont Blanc briefcase. Richard Hartwell. He was nodding at something Nancy said. his chin doing that slow reassuring dip that lawyers use when they are managing a client's expectations. Paige sat on a wooden bench against the wall, legs crossed, scrolling her phone. She looked up when she heard my heels, glanced at me, then at the empty space behind me. No lawyer, no paralegal, no advocate, nobody, and turned away with a smile. The smile wasn't cruel exactly. It was satisfied. It said, "This is going to be easy." Nancy looked me over. Her eyes moved from my face to the briefcase, to the empty hallway behind me. And she smiled too. A small, careful smile. The kind you give someone who has brought a knife to a situation that clearly calls for something larger. I didn't smile back. I walked past them, opened the courtroom door, and chose a seat at the respondent's table. I set the briefcase on the table, unclasped it, and waited. The courtroom was smaller than people imagine. No jury box. Probate cases in Virginia are bench trials decided by the judge alone. One American flag. One Virginia flag. A raised bench of dark wood. And 2 counsel tables separated by an aisle wide enough for one person. The court reporter set up her machine. A clerk arranged files. 2 strangers sat in the gallery waiting for a different case. The Honorable Patricia Okafor entered at 9 sharp. She was a compact woman with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, and a manner that suggested she had heard every variety of human greed, and had run out of patience for embellishment. She called our case. Hartwell stood first. His opening was polished. Your Honor. Grant Allen Mayers executed a valid will 2 months prior to his death. Properly signed and witnessed. The decedent's widow is contesting out of grief and confusion, which, while understandable, does not constitute legal grounds to invalidate a properly executed document. We ask the court to uphold the will as filed. Grief and confusion. I let that sit for a moment. Then I stood. Your Honor. I am not confused. I am a paralegal with 7 years' experience in estate planning at a firm that handles probate litigation. The will submitted by the petitioner is a forgery. And I have the evidence to prove it. The room got quieter. Hartwell's pen stopped moving. Nancy sat a little straighter. Before the judge responded, I caught something. A small private moment. Nancy had opened her wallet in her lap. Inside was a photograph. Grant as a boy. Maybe 8 years old. Holding a fish on a dock somewhere. Nancy's thumb rested on the edge of the picture. Her eyes were wet. She snapped the wallet shut when she felt me looking. Her grief was real. But it didn't justify what she had done. I began with the financial evidence. Your Honor. I would like to present Exhibit A. I handed copies to the court clerk. To Hartwell. And kept one for myself. 7 years of mortgage statements. Every monthly payment of $1,847 drawn from our joint checking account. Signed or auto-drafted under my authorization. 84 consecutive payments. I paid every mortgage installment on the property that the petitioners will claims I have no right to, I said. Judge Okafor adjusted her glasses and reviewed the top page. Continue. Exhibit B, utility bills. Homeowners insurance declarations. Property tax receipts. All addressed to Ingrid Mayers or Ingrid and Grant Mayers. Exhibit C. The bank statement showing Dale Caldwell's withdrawal of $2,800 from Grant's sole proprietorship account. Authorized by a letter identifying Dale as executor. A designation that at the time of withdrawal had not been validated by any court. Your Honor. Mr. Caldwell withdrew funds from the decedent's business account using an unvalidated executor designation. That account is a sole proprietorship asset. His authorization letter had no legal standing at the time of the withdrawal. Hartwell was writing notes faster now. Short scratchy strokes. The handwriting of a man recalculating. I stood still. Hands at my sides. Voice at the same volume I use when I present evidence summaries at my office. Conversational. Precise. Unhurried. Judge Okafor made a note. Looked up. Is there additional evidence, Miss Mayers? Yes, Your Honor. Quite a bit more. I called Tommy Hale to the stand. He wore a button-down shirt tucked into clean jeans. The dressiest I had ever seen him. And I could tell the collar was bothering him by the way he kept running a finger under it. He raised his right hand. Swore to tell the truth. And sat down with the careful posture of a man who respects a courtroom, but would rather be anywhere else. Mr. Hale, I said. Did you witness Grant Allen Mayers sign a will approximately 4 years ago? Yes, ma'am. At the office of Margaret Whitmore on Princess and Street. Grant asked me to come in. We sat at a conference table. He signed the will. I signed as a witness. Mrs. Whitmore signed as the second witness. Did you witness Grant sign any other will at any time? No. Are you familiar with the names listed as witnesses on the will submitted by the petitioner? He looked at the document I handed him. Shook his head. Never heard of either one of them. And Grant and I talked every couple weeks. He would have mentioned something like signing a new will. Hartwell stood for cross-examination. Mr. Hale. How close would you say you are to the respondent? Tommy looked at him steady. I was close to Grant. Grant trusted in Red with everything he had. That is good enough for me. I presented Exhibit D. The original will from the safety deposit box. Grant's signature. The real one with the counterclockwise G I could have drawn from memory. Tommy's name. Margaret Whitmore's name. Everything to each other. Judge Okafor held both wills side by side. One in each hand. And studied them without expression. I thought of what Paige had said. Blood is blood, sweetheart. You were just renting the name. Grant hadn't thought so. Grant had put it in writing. Your Honor. I would like to call my final witness. I paused. Let the sentence settle. Dr. Ellen Sayers. Forensic Document Examiner. Hartwell had been leaning back in his chair with one arm draped over the side. The posture of a man who thinks the hardest part is over. When I said Dr. Sayers's name, he reached for the file on his table and flipped to a section near the back. I watched his face as he read. He had received my exhibit list and a copy of the report 10 days ago. Exactly as required by the rules of discovery. He had had the report in his possession for over a week. But watching his eyes move across the pages, I could see it. The slow physical process of a man reading something carefully for the first time. The color drained from his face the way water drains from a sink. Gradually. Then all at once. From the edges. He leaned toward Nancy and whispered something. Nancy shook her head once. Hard. Paige in the gallery behind them stopped scrolling her phone. Hartwell's mouth formed words I couldn't hear. But I could read one phrase from the shape of his lips and the way his hand pressed flat against the report. Wait. This can't be right. Dr. Sayers entered through the side door. She was 59. Silver-haired. Wearing a charcoal blazer and glasses with thin wire frames. She carried a binder the same size as the one she had shown me in her office. She had testified 47 times. This was 48. She took the stand, stated her name and qualifications, and settled in with the quiet confidence of a professional who has no interest in drama, but absolute certainty in her findings. Judge Okafor nodded. "You may proceed." Dr. Sayers opened her binder and addressed the court the way a professor addresses a lecture hall. Clear, measured, and entirely uninterested in whether her audience found the material convenient. "I examined the question signature on the document dated August 3rd of last year," she said. "I compared it against 6 known exemplars of Mr. Mayes's genuine signature collected from tax returns, a home purchase agreement, business invoices, and building permits spanning a 4-year period." She turned to the first enlargement, a side-by-side at 400% magnification. Finding 1. Pen pressure. A natural signature exhibits pressure variation. Lighter on upstrokes, heavier on downstrokes. The question signature maintains near uniform pressure throughout the middle strokes, which is characteristic of tracing rather than natural handwriting. She moved to the overlay. Finding 2. Slant angle. The question signature deviates 12 degrees from the consistent slant present in all 6 exemplars. Habitual slant is one of the most stable features of an individual's handwriting. A 12-degree deviation is significant. The next page showed microscopic enlargements of the G. Finding 3. Stroke direction. In all 6 exemplars Mr. Mayes formed the uppercase G with a counterclockwise initial loop. The question signature uses a clockwise loop. A person can copy the general shape of a letter. They rarely reverse their own habitual stroke direction when doing so. And they never reverse someone else's without evidence of conscious reproduction. Final enlargement. Finding 4. Subsurface graphite deposits. Beneath the ink of the question signature, there are traces of pencil graphite consistent with an underdrawing. Someone sketched the signature in pencil before tracing over it in ink. She closed her binder. In my professional opinion, the signature on the question document was not produced by Grant Allen Mayes. It was produced through tracing by another individual. Nance's heels did not click. She sat motionless. I noticed it because the absence of that sound, which had followed me through this entire ordeal, felt like a shift in gravity. Hartwell rose for cross-examination. He buttoned his jacket, which is what lawyers do when they need an extra second to think. Dr. Sayers, isn't it possible that the testator simply signed in a hurry? Perhaps under time pressure. Dr. Sayers didn't blink. Haste affects slant angle and letter size. It does not produce graphite traces beneath ink. Hartwell tried again. Could environmental conditions, temperature, humidity, the writing surface, account for the variations you have described? Environmental conditions do not reverse habitual stroke direction. He looked at his notepad, looked at the judge, sat down. No further questions. I stood. Your Honor, I have one additional exhibit. I handed copies to the clerk and to Hartwell. Exhibit E. A printout of the decedent's Google Calendar for the week of August 3rd through August 7th. I pointed to the relevant entries. During the dates the petitioner claims this will was signed. Grant Mayes was in Roanoke, Virginia, approximately 180 miles from his home in Fredericksburg. He was there for a commercial plumbing job. His client's name and address are listed in the calendar entries. The decedent was not at home. He could not have signed this document on the date indicated. Judge Okafor looked at the calendar printout, then at the contested will, then at Nancy. The briefcase on my table was empty now. Everything was on the judge's bench. 7 tabs of evidence spread across the dark wood. The manila folder I had started building in October. The one that had ridden on my passenger seat every morning for 5 months. The one that grew from a few pages to 1 inch to 2 inches to a weight I could feel in my shoulder when I carried it. It had done its job. Nancy's hands were folded on the table. Knuckles white. Paige had stopped scrolling. She sat rigid in the gallery, staring straight ahead at nothing. Dale looked at the floor. Judge Okafor turned to Nancy. Mrs. Caldwell, do you wish to testify regarding the origin of this document? Nancy stood. She smoothed her blazer. She began in a voice that was almost composed. The voice of a woman who had spent 61 years keeping herself upright through worse than this. That will was Grant's final wish, she said. He told me himself. He said he wanted his mother taken care of. He said it more than once. I waited. Then I spoke. Calm. Professional. The same tone I use when I cite case law for clients who are about to lose everything and need to understand why. Your Honor, if the petitioner claims the decedent communicated his wishes verbally, I would note that Virginia Code Section 64.2-4003 requires a will to be in writing and signed by the testator. Oral declarations are not admissible to establish or alter testamentary intent in this jurisdiction. Nancy's composure cracked. Not gradually. All at once. Like a windshield hit by a rock. She's lying. She pointed at me. Her arm fully extended. Her finger shaking. That is my son's house. I raised him alone for 23 years. I sacrificed everything. My career. My marriage. My life. So he could have something. And she walks in here after 7 years and takes it all. Judge Okafor picked up her gavel. Struck once. Mrs. Caldwell. Sit down. Nancy Saturday. She was trembling. Paige stood up in the gallery. Took 1 step toward the aisle. Then stopped. Frozen between fight and flight. She chose flight. I heard the courtroom door close behind her. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. I stood at my table, hands resting on the edge, and waited for the judge to speak. Judge Okafor reviewed her notes. She looked at the 2 wills. One on her left. One on her right. She looked at Dr. Sayers' report. She looked at the calendar printout. She removed her reading glasses and set them on the bench. The courtroom was silent except for the court reporter's machine, which had stopped because nobody was speaking. 30 seconds. Maybe 40. The longest silence of my life. The court finds by clear and convincing evidence that the signature on the document submitted by the petitioner is not genuine. 1 sentence. That was all it took. She continued. The will filed by Nancy Caldwell on behalf of the estate of Grant Allen Mayers is hereby declared void. The court recognizes the prior valid will executed approximately 4 years before the decedent's death. Properly witnessed and authenticated by 2 credible witnesses. Under that instrument, the decedent's estate passes in its entirety to his surviving spouse, Ingrid Mayers. She paused. Additionally, the court is referring the matter of the fraudulent document to the Stafford County Commonwealth's attorney for consideration of criminal investigation, including but not limited to charges of forgery and fraud upon the court. Nancy slumped in her chair. Not dramatically. The way a building settles when something structural gives way. Dale sat behind her, white as the legal pad he wasn't writing on. Paige was already gone. Hartwell gathered his files, closed his briefcase, and stood. As he passed my table on the way to the door, he paused. Nodded once. Small. Tight. Almost imperceptible. The nod of a man acknowledging that he had underestimated someone and knows it. I picked up Grant's briefcase. It was lighter than it had been in months. And I walked out of the courtroom. Tommy was waiting in the hallway. He stood up from the bench when he saw me. Shoved his hands in his pockets. And smiled. The first real smile I had seen from anyone who cared about Grant in a long time. He would have been proud, Tommy said. He would have been annoyed I didn't hire a real lawyer, I said. Tommy laughed. I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in this entire story. And it felt foreign and fragile. Like using a muscle that had gone months without work. We walked out together. The February air was sharp and clean. I stood on the courthouse steps and looked at the parking lot. The bare trees. The grey sky. It was over. In the weeks that followed. The pieces fell where gravity took them. The Commonwealth's attorney opened a preliminary investigation into the forged document. Dale retained his own attorney. Separate from Nancy now. Because their interests had diverged the moment the word criminal entered the conversation. The $2,800 he had withdrawn was flagged for repayment. Paige stopped calling. Stopped texting. I heard through Tommy that she had moved back to Richmond and wasn't speaking to Nancy. Whether that was shame or strategy, one didn't know and didn't ask. Nancy. I don't know what happened to Nancy. I didn't reach out. She didn't reach out. Some doors close quietly. And you realize later that you don't have the energy or the desire to open them again. I drove home that afternoon. Parked in the driveway. And sat on the front porch with Grant's briefcase beside me. I opened it. The only thing left inside was the piece of notebook paper from the safety deposit box. His handwriting. His trust. And I sat there on that porch, as the sun started to drop behind the dogwood tree he planted our first spring in that house. The tree he said every house needed because every house deserves one living thing that isn't paying rent. It had buds on it now. Small. Pale. Stubborn. He had planted it for me. He had locked that letter away for me. He had married me. Loved me. Built a life with me. And before he ever left this earth he had already told the truth about who his family was. In ink. In writing. In a steel box he trusted only me to find. I wasn't renting anything. I had built it. Every mortgage payment. Every late night filing. Every morning I woke up next to him and chose this life. Every evening I came home to a house his mother tried to take from me and refused to let her. It was mine. It had always been mine. And somewhere in the quiet of that porch, with his briefcase empty beside me and his dogwood tree budding in front of me, I finally let myself cry the way I hadn't been able to since the day a nurse handed me his wedding ring in a small envelope. Not because I had lost. Because I had kept him. Every piece of him that mattered. Silence doesn't mean you have accepted defeat. Sometimes it means you are building a case so solid that when you finally speak, the only sound in the room is the other side's confidence hitting the floor. If you made it this far, I want you to know something. The world is full of Nancys. Full of Paiges. Full of Dales. Full of people who will look at a quiet woman carrying her grief in a leather briefcase and assume she has nothing inside it. Don't be the one who underestimates her. And if you are her, if you are the quiet one, the prepared one, the one nobody is taking seriously yet, keep building. Keep filing. Keep showing up. Your moment is coming, and when it does the room will go silent the same way mine did. If this story moved you even a little, Do me one favor right now before you scroll away. Tap that like button so more people who need to hear this can find it. Hit subscribe so the next story I tell shows up for you. And drop a comment below telling me the name of the person who once counted you out. You don't have to explain. Just write the name. I read every single one. And I will be right there in the next story waiting for you.